If you could have done, you could do that. Yeah, nothing before you first.
Wildfires.
Yeah, ice days. Oh, I see.
Pretty much. Now that might get messy.
25 years.
Or this one. What happens if we put them together?
What says go live? No.
No, I'm kidding, I'm not going to do that.
Why does it say that? It's going to do that.
Probably already too close.
That's the problem.
All right. So there you go, right?
All right, everyone. Well, happy Father's Day. Got any dads in the room? All right. We're neglecting the kids by being here. Good job. It's fine to bring them too, but mine would just sit and sulk in the corner, read a book or something. That's how that goes. Well, welcome to the Arkansas Society of Free Thinkers. We're a nonprofit organization devoted to maintaining the separation between state and religion and advocating a scientific and humanistic viewpoint and improving the lives of non-believers. Restrooms, if you need them, are to the back of the room and to your left as you turn around. And ASF is a diverse organization with members who represent a wide range of opinions. Speakers who present at our monthly meeting do not necessarily represent the views of ASF or its individual members. Because we are a 501c3 organization, ASF cannot directly support candidates for public office, but we can advocate for causes such as separation of church and state, scientific literacy, societal progress, and truthful communication. If you'd like to join us, we have an iPad back there on the table that has already got the ASF website pulled up where you can join. It's arfreethinkers.org. And you can also sign in to be added to our communication list. And that said, our first order of business in every meeting is the free thought of the day. This is an opportunity for you if you'd like to come up here with your favorite quote or just some thought that will help settle us and get us in the mood to meet. And today's free thought of the day comes from Howard Zinn, who said, "To be hopeful in bad times is based on the fact that human history is not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act. And if we do act, in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory." That said, our next items that we usually have on our agenda are Skeptical Sidebar and Member Stories. Skeptical Sidebar is a time that we spend looking at some of the misinformation that's going around and that everyone's starting to believe, and tackle that with the scientific viewpoint. It's a speaking opportunity for any of you that would like to, share something that you've found that is outlandish and rebuttable. Member Story is more of like a get-to-know-you opportunity. If you have a part of your life that you'd like to share, a story that is particularly humorous, meaningful to you, that you'd like to help us get to know you better, that's what Member Story is about, and that's also an opportunity. That said, both of those spots are vacant today, so we'll skip straight to our main speaker. Jim, did you have a member story? Is that what you said?
Sure.
I take everything back.
We'll have it back.
Please give Jim Lindsley a warm welcome as he comes to share something with us today.
Come on. All right. Thank you, Senator Chris. I'm here on Dr. Ito's box. I had,
We'll readjust this when she gets up here. A couple of years, several years ago, I worked with a guy. His name was Jeffrey Michael Fuel. A very artistic guy, and it was a film that was called.
It was a few years ago, so it takes me a while.
Spectroscope, which was a really cool scientific film and had some really cool special effects and everything. Anyway, I was on Jeffrey Michael Fuel's Facebook page the other day, and I said this in there. I said, I worked with Jeffrey Michael Fuel, God, he used his full name for effect, on a film several years ago. Greatly impressed, great creativity, quick-witted, great artistic ability, terrific mind, and always loving his work. It's great to see you're still hitting it. And there were several comments in there, and excuse me. You just never know when you will influence somebody with an indelible image. Great work and keep on keeping on. That's what I said. And Jeffrey comes back and he says, you old so-and-so, this message was so wonderful to read, and my cup runneth over. Thank you so much for these very thoughtful and encouraging words, man. I'm all at once reminded of how easily our personalities meshed with which made life and crazy days on the set. That it were crazy days, believe me. When you're trying, one other person he was in the art department, and one other person in another film, a different person is Joe Miles. He worked on another film, which was called Fartzilla, and yes, that was Fartzilla. It was a spoof on the Godzilla movies and everything. But at any rate, Joe Miles was so creative on set that we were in the middle of the scene where it was the war room, where the generals were around and everybody, and we had this big light table and had all these ships and everything on the table, and then somebody says, "Where's the atom bomb explosion?" And everybody's going, "Ah!" So Joe just kind of goes, "Oh my God!" So he goes to the kitchen. This was down at Quapaw Quarter, down in the basement in the fellowship hall. So he goes and runs into the kitchen, comes back out, and he's got a dadgum nuclear explosion in his hand, made out of cotton and what was it? It was steel wool and all sorts of stuff. And I'm going, man. And of course, this was a spoof, so a lot of details didn't really matter. But it was just the creativity of him being able to come out there with this. Anyway, Jeffrey Michael Fuel comes on and he says, "You helped to create an environment where the creative process could thrive, and everyone was better for it, which made the end result one that one could be that much more proud of. Thank you for that," and all that kind of thing. And this is what I said in response to this, and I think this is important. I said, thanks, man. Just pass it on. Let someone else know how much you appreciate them before they are gone.
And I'm going to be gone before he was, I'm sure.
And we can all help others by just recognizing themselves as good people at what they do. My point in all of this is we need to let people know excuse me, we need to let people know that we appreciate them when they're alive. Eulogies are really kind of cool at a funeral, but they don't do a hell of a lot of good, except to the people that are remaining. If you want to have an influence on other people and help continue the creativity and the good work they're doing, talk to them and just say, hey, you've done good, and keep it on going, keep it on, keep it on. And that's all I have. Okay.
Thanks, Jim. And I appreciate you for stepping up just now when we didn't have a member story speaker. I hope that counts. I hope that's warm enough. And I appreciate all of you for showing up today and coming out and getting out of the sun and heat today, which is so pleasant. All right. Now I believe we are ready for our main speaker, Dr. Kinko Ito, who will inform us more about the Ainu. Am I pronouncing that right? People.
Ainu.
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 I knew.
Ainu. No, that's.
I knew.
You said I knew who the Ainu people are,
Oh.
right?
Well, I knew that.
I knew.
So, if everyone would please give a warm round of applause to Dr. Kinko Ito for coming here to us from UALR. And,
Gotta be careful here.
yeah, that's the tripwire.
Yeah.
You can just X out of that when you're done and go to PowerPoint.
Okay. So I'm glad I got this thing here so that I don't have to look like I'm on the guillotine, you know. So Hiroko interview with an Ainu woman was made last year. So it's kind of very, very nice and fresh and everything. And some of you, I think I remember your faces that you were at my previous lecture about the Ainu people. So the Ainu people are the indigenous people of Japan, and they had a very similar experiences with just like Native Americans here or any indigenous groups of the world. So you learned a lot from my lecture at that time, but since it's been a year and a half, so I'm going to show you my newest, film about an Ainu woman, and we're going to use a different methodology today. That is, we're going to look at the Ainu, the indigenous group, from her perspective, her experiences, and so on. So first half an hour, we're going to watch the video, and mostly it's in Japanese, and you have to read the subtitles, and the subtitles may have typos or it may go too fast. And they said, oh my gosh, I can't follow. That's okay. As long as you can get some visual images of Hokkaido, her house, and her cooking or her talk or clothes or whatsoever you can pick up visually, that's the most important thing about this film right now, because I'm going to explain everything later on, okay? So, do you want to turn off the lights here, Jim? Oh, by the way, Jim's production, Shadowbox Production did the post-production things, so they put music and some titles and all these nice things. Okay, so let's see. Just this one here. Right here. This one. Is it over here, Mary?
No, it went off.
Oh, great, great. Okay, great, okay. So if you have any questions or whatsoever, we can do it during my slide presentation, okay? So.
Japan is the modern, industrial, and island nation located in the East Asia. The country is often considered a monolithic nation, but it has various minority groups. The majority of the Japanese population are ethnic Japanese, and the minority groups include the Ainu, who mainly reside in Hokkaido and the Tokyo metropolitan areas, the Ryukyu in Okinawa, Korean and Chinese residents, and the Vietnamese and the Filipinos. The Ainu are the indigenous people of Japan whose ancestors used to live in southern Sakhalin, the Kuril Islands, Hokkaido, and the northern part of the Tohoku region of Japan. The original meaning of the word Ainu is humans in general, man and father. This documentary film introduces Hiroko Fujito. Hiroko was born in Akan in the northeast part of Hokkaido in the 1970s. She was raised in Asahikawa in the western part of Hokkaido, and she also lived in Shizuoka when she was a student. Hiroko strongly identifies herself as an Ainu, and she has been working as an Ainu culture advisor for several years. She visits many schools and universities, not only in Hokkaido, but also many places in Japan. She showcases traditional Ainu craft, tools, clothing, musical instruments, and other items. She sings, dances, and teaches Ainu culture to the students. She's also an excellent artisan, seamstress, and embroidery specialist. This film will introduce the audience to Hiroko, the Ainu culture, and her way of living as an ecological and sustainable life.
そしたらね、何回どれくらい3回ぐらいですね。入れたら、何回か使える。
I first met Hiroko in Kyoto, Japan in May 2023. A professor who was offering a seminar on the Ainu invited me and Hiroko at the Japan Center of an American university as guest speakers. The professor saw my 2 documentary films on the Ainu on YouTube and asked me to talk about them at the seminar. After the seminar, the professor, Hiroko, her assistant, and I went to a nearby cafe and talked about our experiences with the Ainu culture. The professor asked me to join them the following week as a participant. I asked her if I could make a documentary film about her. She was delighted to hear about it, and I was elated about creating another movie about the Ainu. A few months later, I was on my way to Hokkaido. I took a direct flight from Tokyo's Haneda Airport to Mimambetsu Airport. My flight was delayed 15 minutes and arrived at Mimambetsu at 6:45 p.m. The next morning, I naturally woke up at 5:12 a.m. Hokkaido is located in a high latitude and the sun rises very early in summer. It was already bright outside and I decided to explore the surroundings with low-lying mountains and hills and so much lush greenery. I took many pictures as I walked around the house. The first thing Hiroko does in the morning is to pray. The Ainu religion is indigenous, animistic, and polythetic. Just like Japanese Shinto, Hiroko worships and gives gratitude to various gods in nature, such as water, fire, trees, and wind.
これはクパ水っていうので、これでお酒を神に捧げたりとか、自分の先祖とか、自分を守ってくれるすべてのものにお酒を捧げてお祈りをするものなんだけど、これを使うのは私はまだまだおこがましいまだまだなので、私はアイスの棒をちょっとエクパ水に作って、でお酒今ちょっともうトマトが切れてて日本酒でしてます。で自分のまず、お台所にいる火のお水の神さんと火の神様にお酒をあげて、で自然界にいるすべての命神さんにお願いして、で自分の先祖に自分の 自分を守ってくれて全てお祈りして、でちょっといただいて、で最後ここに私の宝物と一緒に、はい、お祈りしてあげようと。
毎日するの？
毎日、朝はじゃあきこちゃんも、
やってみたいです。
はい、じゃあちょっとやり方説明します。私がこれにパスをひっくり返してで3回でして渡すので、きこちゃんは3回3でもらいます。でここに自分の命をね乗っけて、私はあなたを信頼してますよ、この命をあなたに捧げてもいいぐらい信頼してますよという気持ちがここにあると思って優しくで受け取るっていうことをします。
最後に手を合わせないの？
最後そう、きこちゃん今手を合わせてお祈りしたけど、手を合わせるのは日本の文化で、アイヌの文化で手を合わせるはないので、
じゃあどうしたらいいの？
手を合わせるって文化と同じで、これがお祈りとかでそういった時の挨拶、日本はそうだけど、はい、
あ、そうで、ひろこちゃんはさ、日本に住んでいるアイヌとしてさ、手を合わせることあるのかな？
あるよ、だって神棚あるし。
あ、そっかそっか。あ、じゃあフレキシブルに臨機応変で手を合わせたり、そのアイヌ式でやったりしてるわけね。
アイヌだけど、日本っていうね、土地国に今ね、文化はいるから、だからもちろんアイヌの文化も私は学びたいけど、日本の文化もちゃんと学びたい。
っていうか、まあ日本人としてここで生まれたっていう縁があるから、だからそこの文化も要するに尊敬して、神社に行った時には手を合わせてって、でもここだとアイヌ式にっていうわけね。
でもね、日本人で生まれたっていう感覚はない。私はやっぱり生まれた時からアイヌだし、今もやっぱり日本人っていうよりはアイヌ、
じゃあ
でいたい。
だからちょっとね、いろいろとほら、なんていうの、日本のちょっと法的なあれになるんだけど、例えばほら戸籍とかにさ、アイヌとかって書かれてるとないじゃん。みんな日本人は日本人なんだけど、じゃあひろこちゃんの感覚としてはやっぱりなんていうのかな、自分はアイヌっていうのがすごく柱にあって、でそれで日本人はたまたま例えばパスポート取る時、ここの国だからっていう、そういう感覚なのかな。
というか例えばほら海外に行ったら、その海外の文化に馴染もうとするじゃない。でその文化をそこの文化を馴染んで、そこの生活暮らしを楽しくやっぱり過ごしたいっていうのと同じだと思うんだけど、やっぱ日本にいるからこそ日本の文化も大事にしたいっていうのがすごくあって、アイヌだからアイヌ文化だけを大事にするんじゃなくって、それと一緒に他の、そこに根付いてる文化もすごく大事にしたいなっていうのは、
まあ今はアイヌの多様性っていうやつだよね。
それをちっちゃい時からでやってる。
すごいね、でもね。でこのオニオン族は誰に教わったわけ？
教わったっていうよりはもう見よう見まねで、そうもうおじいちゃんおばあちゃんとか父とかがやってた横で一緒になってねやってきたことを、私はただ見よう見まねで、だからこれが正解とかこれが間違ってるってなくって、お祈りの仕方ってね、本当人それぞれだと思うし、私はこのお祈りの仕方。
そっか。だから例えばね、他の地方のアイヌの人たちのお祈りの仕方とはほぼ大体基本的には同じなのかな。
一緒かもしれないね。祈る方向とか祈り方とか、そういったのは一緒なのかもしれない。
なんかだからほら前鍋沢さんっていうね、絵歌師にほら送ってもらって、ほらアメリカに帰るからって言った時に送る儀式をしていただいた時の、それになんかよく似てるっていうか、こういうふうにしてとか何かやってとかっていう感じ。
なんかお祈りって自分だけが思ってお祈りするんじゃなくって、やっぱり相手がいて相手のことをやっぱ思ってするのがお祈りだと思うから、だからそのね、こうどっかやっぱり遠くに離れていってしまうとか、 ね、子供がせっかく出会った人がまたこう旅立っていくっていう時にはやっぱりお祈りして、その人がまたいつか元気で、ね、お互い会えるようにっていうお祈りもやっぱりするし、それはやっぱり相手がいての自分っていうのがそこにあるからだと思うけど、
そうだよね。なんかでも涙出てきちゃった。鍋沢さんのことを思い出して涙出てきちゃった。だから私がね、2014年だったかな、アメリカに帰るっていうんで、そのあれをやってもらって、でそれで次会おうねって言った時に、ほら昨日もお話ししたように、私が来る本当10日ぐらい前にお亡くなりになっちゃって、でもなんかお亡くなりになったからこそかな、なんか知らないんだけど、鍋沢さんと一緒に行った自然のところがあるのね、やっぱり。今日もねそこら辺見てたんだけど、アーカンソーの景色にすごく似てんだよ、なんか感じが。でそれでなんか初めて来たとは見えない、もう私ここにいたわって感じで、でアーカンソーにいる時もなんかそういう自然にね入っていく時に、鍋沢さんがいつもね「アイヌは自然の中です」っておっしゃったのね。でそれでなんか鍋沢さんが特に亡くなられたこそなのかもしれないけど、すごいなんか感じるの、そのなんていうの、きっと先生いるよっていう感じで、だからなんかそこはすごくね、素敵な感じ。
なんかね、お祈りする時ってこう遠く離れてても、私はやっぱりあなたを守ってるからねって常に思い続けてるからねっていう気持ちをやっぱり込めたりとかするから、そういったのできっとこうお話をすると必ずこう会いに来てくれるっていう、私はそんな感覚をねいつも思ったりして、
私でもね、友達でもさ、もう10年以上前に亡くなった友達とかいるんだけど、でもその人の話をして、この日常会話にいる間は、その人はなんかまだいると思うのね。だから
なんか話しかけてる。どうした？
イタちゃんどうした？
ご飯か。ご飯ですか。すいませんね、私ご飯ですね。ご飯の時間。
ご飯忘れてた？
シャンペン買いといでよ。玄関開けるよ。
I started to notice that Hiroko has a lot of love and respect to the living things, whether they are animals, insects, or plants. Hirokoちゃんのお気に入りの場所。で、熊とかだったらどこから出てくるわけ？上の方から来たり。
上でも下でも関係ない。木登ってるかもしれないし。
木に登ってる？
木登り得意、走り得意、泳ぎ得意だから。
なんかもうオリンピックの選手みたいじゃん。ひろこちゃんは熊に直接会ったことはないわけ？
あるよ。
ある？
あるある。
どこで会ったの？
どこで会ったの？山の中。
山の中だけど、その時とは鈴とかしてたの？
してない。
あ、そうなの？
もう熊には目あったけど、熊にもここ道通るだけだからすぐ行くからねって一言言ってささっと。
あ、そうなの？
そこには絶対立ち止まっちゃダメだから。
なんかさ、熊に会ったらさ、走ったらいいとか言うけど、それはダメなの？
追いかけてくるよ。
犬ってそうだよ。なんか犬もそうだよね。走ると遊んでもらってると思ってさ、追っかけてくるのがあれなんだけど、熊もそうなの？
熊もね、じっとしてても来るし、走っても
来る
し、じゃあどうすんだよって、もうその時にならないとどうなるかわからない。
ひろこちゃんのお知り合いで熊に襲われた人とかいる？やっぱり。
いない。
そう、やっぱりみんなお互いさ、なんか尊敬し合ってるっていうかさ、ここはあなたのとこだからっていう、そういう気持ちで言ったら、キムカムイも、じゃあちょっとお邪魔してって感じなのかな。
優しく見守ってくれると思うんだよね。何にもしなければ、そぎ何かを持っていくとかね、なんかそういうのしない限りは、やっぱり山を守る神だから、それだって根こそぎ持っていくだったりとかね、何か破壊したとかだとそれは怒るに決まってるじゃん。
でも鬼面仮面が一番神様の中で地位が高いんじゃないのかな。
いやね、位が高い地位が高いっていう考え方はね、人間の勝手なあれだから。
あ、そうなのそうなの。だからみんな平等ってこと？
平等。
そりゃそうだよね。みんな森の中で生きていくあれなんだからさ、地位がどうのこうのとかそんなの
人間だけだからそれを考える。
Hiroko moved from Osaka to Rikubetsu a few years ago. Her new neighbor introduced her to a women's association called the Cosmos Association. Hiroko and I were to help the women with their garden and have lunch with them. Hiroko introduced me as her friend from America to the members. As soon as we arrived there, we started weeding with the ladies. After we finished weeding, the women invited us to lunch and we had a wonderful time talking.
綺麗なんだよね。ここは
白樺だよね。すごい綺麗。
住んでんのかな。
そう、林業の町だからね。
陸別？
そう、まあでも北海道全体がだよね。警戒を本当にダメにする。
これは何の電気を使ってるわけ？
ね、電力会社が土地を買って借りてやってるんだと思うんだよね。
なんかね、松坂のやっちゃんがね、松坂って言っても奈良に近い林業のやってるところにさ、嫁いだのよ。それで林業やってるって山の中でも奈良県に近い方なんだって。だけどその農耕地で使われてないところは今全部ああいう感じになってるんでしょうね。だから景観損ねるけど、そのまあ生態学的っていうか環境学的に言ったら一応エネルギーはセーブしてるわけだよね。でひろこちゃんそれはどういうふうに思う？やっぱり景観を取るか
私はそこまで電力を必要と
していないところ、
なんだろう、便利になりすぎて、それはね、夜電気がついてたら、明るいし、いろんなことできるしね、ホッとするし、いいかもしれないけど、これで人間って電気ね、なかったらないなりにきっと生活慣れるんじゃないかな。だからなんかここまでなんかする必要性はあるんだろうかってすごく思うの。
まあ、場所的にほらここ人口も多くないし都会じゃないから、ってこともあるんだろうね、きっとね。
でもさ、それって都会の人が言うあれじゃない？
そうだよ。
だからあれだよ、開拓する側と開拓される側の立場の違いと同じ。
わかるわかる。
なんてすごく思うんだよね。
でもそういうのはそういうふうに環境がそういうふうだとそういうふうにしか考えれないんだよね、やっぱりね。でも開拓される側と開拓する側では随分あれが見方が違うからさ、だからその開拓する人が
人間はそういったの全然考えずに利益のためにどんどん
木を切っちゃうんだよね。
それでそうやって民家でその下に民家が建ってればもちろんなんかあったら崩れるのは当たり前だし、
結局人間がさ手を入れることによってそういう災害も起きるってこと？
そう、私はそう思う。だから本当に勝手な自然災害では絶対ないと思うので、何かしら人間が手を加えたところでそういったことって起きてると思うんで、
結構でもなんかさ、山の一面の一部分が全部木が伐採されてるとかそういうのよくあるもんね。
そんなさ、山って何でできてるって土でできて、土だけでできてるわけじゃなくて、それを木々 わけじゃない。その守ってる木々たちを伐採してったら、そりゃだって土だって、ねえ、何も守ってくれるグローブみたいなものがなければ
崩れるしかないよね。
崩れるしかないじゃない。
なんか中年女性の話してるみたい。崩れて崩れて、お肌が崩れてシワになるっていうかさ、張りがなくなっちゃうのと一緒だよね、多分ね。でも困るよね。
だからもうちょっと人間はなんだろう、人間だけのことを考えずに、もっとなんか地球のことを本当に真剣に考えていかないと、人間がどんどん壊していくけど、人間のせいにしないんだよね。
で、私その人間もさ、例えばさ、資本主義のお金に貪欲な人の人間がそういう結果を考えずに、そこの地域に住んでる人のことを考えずに開発していっちゃうって私は思うんだよね。だから結局ほら。
One of the ladies who has a ranch invited us to visit her animals. The town of Rikubetu is known for forestry and dairy farm industries. While Daiki was practicing and taking lessons in karate, Hiroko and I went back to her car and waited for him. Hiroko started embroidering. On my third day in Rikubetu, Hiroko took me to Honbetsu town and picked indigo plant with her. We arrived at Mrs. Takahashi's house first, and we went to the indigo fields.
今刺繍教室のね、みんなが作ってるデザインの元を提供したのね、それを私は私のそのデザインの広げ方。
何のデザインなのこれは？
アイヌ文様のね。
これ刺繍？ここ？
そうそう、全部刺繍。
ああ、素敵素敵。ちょっと待ってね。で、これはどういう名前の着物ですか？
これチンジリ。
チンジリ。
チンジリとかチジリ。ちょっと
あ、チジリね。ああ。
下ね、
まだ途中なんだ。
まだちょっとね、
あ、すごいすごいすごい。ここまで来るのにどれくらいかかったの？
これ私はね、1年。
すごい。
デザインから起こしてるから本当にオリジナル世界で。
わ、すごいすごい。The only one すごい。袖口も見せて。袖口はこれは鍵がないわけ？これは袖口から変な魔物が入るとかって言ってさ。
あるよ、角あるよ。
角
全部あるよ。
あ、本当だ。すごいね。それは何、魔物っていうか何が入るんですか？
魔物。災い事ね。災い事が入ってこないように。
で、それから自分を守るってこと？
そうそう。
あれ、前もあるじゃんね。
そう、前もあるよ。
うわ、すごい。すごいすごい。
まだちょっと未完成だけど。
で、どこから作るの？作るあれ。形っていうか、どこから始めるわけ？
どこから始める？
背中から。背中から。へえ。で、糸はどういう糸を使ってるんですか？
糸は、これはもう何も染めてないやつで、これは草木染めの糸で、私は結構草木染め自分で染めた糸を使って。
何の草木を使ったんですか？
これはね、よもぎ。
ああ、柔らかい色だよね。
綺麗だよね。
で、庭で育ててる藍は何？紺色？藍色か。
藍色。
そうかそうか。なんかそこら辺ちょっと踊りとかやってくれたら嬉しいんだけど。
踊り？何の踊り？
ついでに踊りとかやってくれたら嬉しいんだけど。
こんなや
そうそうそうそうそう。はい、いらんからってなんか手がすごく青いんですけど昨日藍染めをしてきました。はい、それで揉んだのね。そう、揉んだの。で、藍染めって何ですか？藍ってインディゴ。藍は畑からね、土から育ててる子たちを、昨日は藍を買って干して染料を作るための準備をしてきたので、一生懸命揉んで揉んで、はい、藍が染まりました。藍に染まった。すごいでしょでもなんかさ、いらん方辛くてってなんかゾンビの手になってなっちゃうよね、なんかね。アイヌ民族っていうとみんなはいまだに昔ながらのね生活をしてるっていうふうに思われがちなんですけど、みんなの生活と何ら変わりはなくって、当たり前のようにみんなと同じような家に住み、ベッドで寝て、みんなと同じようなご飯を食べてって、それが今を生きる私たちアイヌであって、決して昔ながらの生活をねずっとしているわけではなくって、でもその中でちょっとずつちょっとずつお祈りがあったりとか、アイヌ語でちょっとだけ喋ってみたりとか、心の中には常に昔のアイヌのおばあちゃんおじいちゃんたちがいてくれて、その中で今の生活、みんなと何にも変わりがない生活をしてきています。その中でやっぱり知ってほしいことは、私たちは常にみんなと同じっていうこと。ひろこちゃんがいろいろ文化継承活動とかする上で、アイヌの法律っていうのかな、なんか文化振興法とかいろいろ今あると思うんだけど、それの影響っていうのはありますか？やっぱりお金の面でサポートしてくれるとか、プログラムサポートしてくれるとか、そういう恩恵っていうのはあるのかな？私が立ち上げてる会に対しての、国からの助成とか援助とか、そういったことは一切なくって、で受け入れたこともないです。で、もちろん申し込みとかしたことはあるけれども、やっぱり一個人の会っていうので、どれだけ私たちがアイヌ民族のことを伝えようっていう活動をしてても、それを受け入れたことは一度もないです。ただ子どもたちに関しては本当に手厚い対応をやっぱり国がねしてくれてるけど、でも決してそれがアイヌの子どもたちだけそういうね手厚い補助を受けたりとかではなくって、やっぱ国は国でちゃんと一人一人それなりにね手厚く子どもたちがちゃんと学校に通えるように、自分の学びがやっぱりちゃんとしたいようにっていうふうに国はちゃんと考えてくれて、アイヌの子どもたちはアイヌの子どもたちの、援助っていうものはあるけれども、それ以外にもちゃんと都道府県日本っていう国の援助っていうのは受け入れていると私は思っています。それは日本にいて幸せだなっていうふうに思います。どういう援助の仕方があるんですか？子どもたちに対しては例えば比べられてると分けられてるっていうふうにもちょっと思ってしまう時も私はねあるんだけれども、私たちの子供はアイヌの子供っていう意味で、そのアイヌの子に対しての例えば高校生活の中での授業料とかそういったのは日本政府が援助してくれたりとかそういったのはあるけど、決してそのアイヌの子だけに限らずに他のね子はアイヌって区切らない子どもたちはそれはそれでまたちゃんと都道府県で受け入れたりとかねするシステムがちゃんと成り立ってるので、ただその中でそのアイヌの子って分けられてるところはちょっと私は違和感は感じたりとかもするんですけど、それだったら全部の子どもたちに同じように分ける必要性がない、そのアイヌの子とかで分けることなく一人一人の子どもたちに同じ同等のその援助が受け入れてるんですよっていうことを伝えていってもらえた方が、親の思いというか、その分けることなくみんなが当たり前のように平等に受け入れてるんだよっ
っていうことを伝えていけれた方が私はね親としては嬉しいかなとは思うんですけど。
アイヌの子っていうその定義っていうのは何なの、親がアイヌだったとか、あとアメリカだと8分の1その血が入ってると黒人になるとかって、まあ、いろいろ定義があるんだけど、アイヌの子っていうのはそのどこまでがアイヌの子って言われてるのかな。
私もねちょっといまいちわからないんですけど、そのアイヌの子って言われてるその制度ね、女性が受けれるのは例えばアイヌ協会っていうところがあるんだけど、そこに名前があるとかね、その町でアイヌに関する団体に入ってますとかね、そういったので証明されるというか、だから北海道外のアイヌの子どもたちは逆に受けれないとかね。
北海道の中でだったらいいんだけど、例えば大阪にいたらアイヌでも
受けれない、だから北海道に来たからこそやっぱりそういう手当とかね、そういったものはあるけれど、じゃあ私がそのまま大阪にいたらその子どもたちにはそういう援助っていうのは一切ないので、そうじゃなくて本当は日本全国にそういった制度っていうのがあるべきことなのじゃないかなとも、ね、思うんですけど。
しかもアイヌとか、アイヌじゃないとかの以前にそのなんか貧困家庭とか、そういうやっぱり最低限の生活してる人には全て関係なく与えるっていうのがあれだよね、基本的には。だけど北海道の場合はアイヌだとその歴史的な背景があるから、やっぱりちょっと後ろめたいっていう気持ちがあるのかな、その奨学金あげますよとか。なんか
でもね、そこで分けてしまうとまたそこで差別が生まれると思うんです。アイヌの子供だけがそういう援助を受けてるとかね、やっぱりそういう避難になるようなきっかけが、今のそのアイヌの子だけにそういうことがやってますよっていう風になってしまってるから、なんかそれはちょっとできれば同じ子どもたちを平等にっていう風にしてもらえた方が、北海道内道外も同じようにそういうことが行われてるんですよっていう風にしてもらえた方が、やっぱりこの先生きる子どもたちにとってもいいのかなっていう風にはね思うんですけど。本日は私を知っていただきやいらいけれ。これからも先祖と自身に誇りを持ち、国や民族関係なく笑顔で伝えるための活動を続けていきます。いつか皆様とお会いできる日を楽しみにしています。そして皆様の日々が笑顔でありますように祈りをお伝えします。ソンもやいらいけれ。死ぬぬからんろく。
I enjoyed spending time with Hiroko in Hokkaido. I learned many things about her culture and way of life. I expressed my gratitude to her and returned home. This has been a fascinating look into one Ainu woman's challenges and victories in modern Japan.
Okay, I'm going to stop here. And let's see. Chris, where are my slides?
Bottom right, the
Just a minute.
P with the circle. Yeah.
Oh, here.
And you hit the little present button on the lower right.
Oh. It's not. You can tell that I've never done that before, right?
It's really tiny.
Okay, so okay, great.
Yeah.
And then I should just use this down arrow, right, for the next. So this is the title of my presentation, Behind the Scenes, and you just watched Hiroko interview with an Ainu woman. So now we're going to look at her culture and identity And some of you already know a little bit about the Ainu people. Now, so this interview, okay, the film, Interview with an Ainu Woman, was directed, photographs, translated, written, and narrated by Kinko Ito. So I did just about everything. And I really wish that I had a lot of money so that the professional can do it, you know, the cameraman, the audio man, and all these things. But I just had to do it with my small $99 camera from Kmart. So I met Hiroko Fujito in 2023 in May when this American professor, actually he was a Japanese professor who was teaching at an American university, Stanford actually, and he wanted to do some kind of ecological presentation seminar in Japan, and that is why Hiroko was invited. And because he was going to cover a little bit about the Ainu and he watched my movies, there were two others. So I was invited as part of the program too. So that's where I met. And then Hiroko invited me to, come to her house and live with her for several days. And that's culminated in this film. Now, so visual sociology, have you heard about it? I'm sure you know what sociology is, right? Have you taken sociology before? Yeah, some sociologists, they're so bad, they make you feel bored. But anyway, there is a branch of sociology which is called visual sociology. So Timothy Curry and Alfred Clark, these are the two people who are at the Ohio State. That's where I was, so I know them personally. And they said that visual sociology adds a new dimension to sociology, and it provides new ways of conceptualizing and measuring aspects of our social world. So Chris said that he knew Ainu, right? He said, I knew Ainu. But anyway, so there were lots of visual images. So if I just talk about the indigenous people who are called the Ainu, then you would have no idea, no visual images, right? But from the film, as you watched, what kind of things do you remember about her or the surroundings?
The way the house looks.
Houses look like what?
Just what it looks like to live in that house.
Yeah, quite modern when you think about imagining that Ainu people live in the thatched roof kind of house. No, they just live just like the Japanese people. What else did you notice? Did you notice mountains and trees, anyone? What did it look like? Arkansas, yeah. Yeah, really, isn't that interesting? Okay, so of course since Hokkaido is up in the north, the trees are different. So botanists might see all these trees and grass and flowers differently, but for layperson, it looks just like here. Like when you go to Hot Springs, village or around that area, it looks exactly like that. Of course, we don't have bears in Arkansas, except in West Little Rock. There was once, I think. Yeah, we got coyotes too. Yeah. Okay. Now, so according to Douglas Hopper, visual sociology is an invitation to do sociology differently, to study the world as it appears, and to use camera and other means to define those appearances as well. So because I brought my camera and then I brought your audio, you can kind of have a little bit of more overall kind of experience of Hokkaido or the world that Hiroko lives in, rather than just reading a book, which are all just letters and so on. So Hiroko, I think you saw her dancing. So this is the picture when she was doing the presentation at that workshop, and she made all her clothes. And it takes like 3 years and more to do embroidery and the patchwork and everything else. So this one, the areas right here, it's different. So you would add different types of cloth, and then you would embroider the rest and something like that. So let's just talk about Hiroko's short bio. So how many of you have been to Japan?
At the airport.
Okay, now, so Hiroko was born near Lake Akan is right here. Okay, and this is Lake Akan. So it is not in the metropolitan area, obviously it's rather rural. But Akan is actually a national park, just like, again, hot springs, you know. And then this is a map of Japan, and right here at the tip is like Montreal, Canada, and then at the very bottom, Okinawa, that is like Florida, Key West, something like that. So Japan is very long. And Fujito, her last name is limited to her extended family only, and her family and relatives now in Akan, which is over here, and Asaka, which is on the western side, that's in Hokkaido, and Tokyo is here, and Mount Fuji is here. Okay, so today's Ainu people, they do not necessarily live in Hokkaido alone. They would live just like anybody else. And actually, they like to live in big cities because they can mingle with other people and they do not stand out. You know, because the Ainu are racial and ethnic groups. So some Ainu people do have very different kind of facial characteristics. So some of the Ainu people that I met in Hokkaido, they look like Italian or Polish or Russian or Polynesian or Chinese, or, you know, they all look very, very different. So Hiroko's ancestors lived in Asahikawa in the western part of Hokkaido, and Hiroko was raised there when she was a student in an elementary school and junior high school. So Asahikawa is a relatively large city, and it has lots of nature, and it snows a lot. You can just kind of tell from that picture. Now, so Hiroko lived among the Ainu people in Hokkaido. However, at her school, the majority of the students were non-Ainu Japanese, and Hiroko felt marginal. And I would like you to remember the term marginal, because when you're a child and you feel marginal, that affects how you make your identity later on when you're an adult. So you are there, but you don't quite belong. You're part of it, but you're not quite part of it, and so on. Okay? So Hiroko was exposed to overt prejudice and discrimination by her classmates, and she could not attend a senior high school because her family was poor. And this is an interesting thing. Usually, the compulsory education in Japan is 9 years. 6 years of elementary school and 3 years of junior high school. And Hiroko, you can tell she's a very intellectual, smart girl, woman. But she could not go to senior high school because that was not in compulsory education system. So, and then I asked her why, and then he said, we were poor, that's what she said. So Hiroko's mother was from Shizuoka, it is in Honshu, mainland Japan, and she traveled to Hokkaido, fell in love, and married Mr. Fujito. And Hiroko's father has a distinctively Ainu facial, character. He does not look like, like ethnic majority Japanese people. So Hiroko's mother was obviously a very adventurous girl when you think about the time frame and everything. So she fell in love and then married Mr. Fujito. So after graduating from junior high school, Hiroko worked and lived in Shizuoka. That's where her mother is. And she told me that there was some kind of family problems because her father is an artist, a wood carver, and obviously you cannot get regular salary or wages or whatsoever. It comes here and there, but not always. So they moved to Shizuoka to be economically more stable. Okay, so that's what it is. So she married Washin, okay, whom she met at work in Nagoya, and I'm from Nagoya, and then she moved to Osaka and had 2 children, and she got divorced but keeps a very good relationship with her ex-husband. And some people, when there are mixed couples, they say there's something that they cannot quite understand or quite keep it for a long time. I don't know what it is because I've never got married. But anyway, sometimes the food is different. The food preferences are different. So, this could be the problem, or certain things, stereotypical kind of things, or the influence from other people, from the community, negativity or whatsoever. So Hiroko said that she could not just get along with her husband. But her 2 children, they're in junior high school and senior high school. They're very well adjusted, and they're on good terms with the father, and then they still keep in touch and everything. So her two children were not happy attending schools in Osaka due to bullying, and she and her children decided to move from Osaka to Hokkaido several years ago, and they now live in Rikubet. So that's what Hiroko was talking about. If she had stayed in Osaka, two children could not have been getting like scholarships and other good things because they are an Ainu. But since they moved to Hokkaido, and because of the colonial past, unfortunate past, the government of Hokkaido is very sensitive about what they did to these Ainu people, so they can get extra help. But Hiroko says, not just Ainu children, but if any non-Ainu Japanese people need help, then they should. That's what she was talking about. So life in Rikubeta, so what kind of surrounding does she live in? That's her backyard. Yeah, it looks like just like Arkansas, doesn't it? Some people. Even in West Little Rock area, you find certain houses in that kind of area. And that's Hiroko and her daughter, eating sushi with me and so on the first night. So Hiroko Fujito's work. So Hiroko works as a certified Ainu culture advisor, and she visits many junior and senior high school, colleges, and universities as a guest lecturer, not only in Hokkaido, but also many places in Japan. So she just goes just about all over Japan. And so I'm going to Japan in July, and I'm going to see her. And she's going to come from Osaka, and then I would have dinner with her in Nagoya, and then she's going to go to Tokyo next. So she's quite famous as a craft woman as well, and she's well known too. So she does, showcases Ainu craft clothing, tools, musical instruments, and other things. And she sings Ainu songs and dances traditional Ainu dances, blah, 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 blah. So she's an excellent artisan, seamstress, and embroidery specialist. So one of her dreams is to come to America and have her exhibit. So these are the clothings, as I said. The white and the red part, these are appliqued to the cloth, the body, and then it is embroidered and so on, and she made all this, it's just beautiful. So that's the front, and this is the back. It's very gorgeous. So this is another one, and you can see the appliques here, and then the embroideries all over. It's very intricate. And then usually the design of these Ainu clothing or whatsoever is passed down from the mother to daughter, traditionally. Then this one you can see, this is an close-up, and you can see the chain stitches that she did. And so she's a very good artisan and craftswoman. So an introduction to the Ainu people and culture. And I showed these when I did the presentation in January last year. I think some of you remember, that's why you said, yeah, I knew where they are from, okay. The world map in Japan. So the Ainu people used to live in the southern Saharan and Creole Islands. These are now Russian territories. And that's Hokkaido, and then the northern part of Hokkaido. The Honshu, okay. And Japan is often considered a monolithic nation, but it is actually a multi-ethnic country. So if we can take this back today, that's great. Because a lot of you think that in Japan, only Japanese people live, right? That's just the kind of idea sometimes. But it actually has all these multi-ethnic and racial population there. So the Ainu, the indigenous people of Japan, and then the Ryukyu in Okinawa. So have you seen people from Okinawa? And then a lot of Okinawans, when they come to the United States, and then an American person says, where are you from? And then sometimes they say, oh, I'm an Okinawan. And I said, huh? You're a Japanese. And then she says, no, I'm from Okinawa. So I'm an Okinawan. And that was, some 40 years ago. So, because coming from the mainland Japan, I don't think about all these peripheral kind of areas. Does that make sense to you? So the Okinawans, a lot of them are very upset with the Japanese government and the Japanese people, because basically during World War II, Okinawans are used as like pawns, So when the Americans invaded Okinawa, the Japanese government did not help them or anything. They perished and so on. And racially and ethnically, the Okinawans are different from the Japanese. And the part of the reason is Okinawa used to be a kingdom. Okay, so the southern state of Japan, like Kagoshima or Satsuma in those days, they went to Okinawa and then basically they reigned, the control the area. So the kingdom of Ryukyu, what we call Okinawa, they had their own language, they had their own king and everything else. That's bad enough, isn't it? Okay, and then during World War II, that's the second time around, right? So the mainland Japanese people, we love Okinawa because it's just like Hawaii, beautiful sky, beautiful ocean, and it's resort and everything. That's how we feel. But from the Okinawan people's perspective, we were used by this government, and now it's like colonialism. That is, the Japanese capital would go, come to Okinawa, build all these hotels and resorts and everything. The Okinawan people are hired, but they do not really benefit from any kind of things except wages. So anyway, so that's the Ryukyu in Okinawa. And then there are Korean residents because Korea was colonized by Japan. So there are the descendants of Koreans, who lived in Japan at that time, and then the Chinese, and then the Vietnamese, and Filipinos, Brazilians, and so on. So who are the Ainu? The original meaning of the word, Ainu means humans in general, man and father, and happy Father's Day! So, the Ainu are the indigenous people of Japan, and they are a racial and ethnic group. And the vast animal shield they covered, I think we just looked at the map, didn't we? So, the Ainu people, they are, okay, I said, a full-blood Ainu had racial traits such as fair skin, long nose, round eyes, blah, 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 blah. Now, some of you say, well, is that the typo? Is that the typo or not? What do you think?
Well, no, but the next sentence.
Huh?
No, because of the next sentence.
Yeah, there are not many full-blooded Ainu anymore. That is what they had. Okay? So intermarriages between the Ainu and non-Ainu Japanese have been taking place for a very long time. So Hiroko can pass as a Japanese, especially because her mother is from Shizuoka, right? And that is an interesting thing. But she strongly identifies with the Ainu, her daddy's blood, okay? So the estimated number of the Ainu population is about 24,000, but this is not reliable statistics. I think you know why, don't you? Why is that? Why is it unreliable?
Because people don't want other people to know they're Ainu.
Yeah, exactly. Because of bullying and discrimination and prejudice and other things. If you can pass as a Japanese, why should you come out as an Ainu and go through that kind of negative experiences, obviously? And also, I think in your birth certificate, there is a place where you put race. Don't we have that?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, because my boyfriend's birth certificate, it says his name, his mom and dad, and it says white.
Yeah, usually, I think it's state by state, but generally,
Yeah. So in Japan, we don't put Ainu there. No, we don't. So that's why we don't know. But mostly we can tell from the last names, which is interesting. Just like you can tell a person's biological background, like if somebody's name ends with like ski, Polish, or around the Eastern European countries, or like Lee or Park, Korean, that kind of thing, okay? Now, so, and Ainu are not a monolithic group, and there are regional differences. So, I would like to remember, like when we talk about the Latinos, they're not a monolithic group. Latinos have different skin colors, different cultures, and different languages. It's not just Spanish, but they're different, okay? Now, so the Ainu people in the past, so what do you notice about these people, from the past?
They look Polynesian.
Yeah, some of them, yes.
and the long white beard.
Yes, beard, yes. And this woman has tattoo around her mouth.
Oh, yeah.
And remember, Hiroko had tattoo
Yeah.
when she was dressed in the traditional things. She uses a fake tattoo, of course, because she can wash it off. But in those days, Ainu girl would start tattooing their mouths like in their teens, and then they would gradually make it bigger and bigger. And when it is big enough, then you get married and have children.
That's the same with some of the indigenous in the Eskimos.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
They have, and some of the indigenous in South America, they have certain tattoos they get that mean certain developmental times.
Yeah. And then American girls do that here and here.
Right.
That's to make your father.
I also noticed that she had a
Choker, yeah.
choker
Yeah.
that if you looked at it, it looked like it could almost have been a tattoo because it wasn't.
Yeah.
But you know it's not because she's got pictures of her without it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but this is the kind of traditional thing for your neck and so on. And then, so the Ainu men have white beard and so on, and then some men had earrings too, okay? And so this one is more like Japanese kimono, but this is obviously Ainu kind of clothing. I think you can kind of tell. The interesting thing is when the colonization war took place, okay, in the 19th century, the Japanese government said no women's tattoos because it's barbaric. No men's earrings because that's not manly. Okay, the total assimilation process. We talk more about that, but anyway, so these are the images of the Ainu people from the past. Now, so the modern Ainu people, you can still see the clothing, okay, embroidery and appliques and so on. And this guy, he doesn't really look Japanese, does he? You can see that kind of guy on the street somewhere in Texas. You know what I mean? Okay,
It's Russian.
with curly hair and everything, okay? Okay, now, so how do the Ainu live in the contemporary Japan? Today's Ainu are totally assimilated to the Japanese way of life. I mean, just like anybody else. So how do the Native Americans live here in America? Do they wear all these birds, feathers? No. No. Or do they, ride horses? No. They drive cars, don't they? And they don't have hairdressing thing either. So that's basically the same thing with the Japanese people. Now, the modern history of the Ainu in Japan. So 1889, the Japanese government issued the Hokkaido Former Aborigines Protection Act concerning the state status of the Ainu. The act included assimilation policies, confiscation of land, destruction of Ainu's way of life. The Ainu were given Japanese citizenship. Now, we have to understand history here. Why did the Japanese government have to make Ainu people Japanese people? Okay, Hokkaido did not belong to any country. And then the Russians were interested in, ice-free, freeze-free, or whatsoever, the port somewhere. So the Russians were coming down, okay? And then there are other people, British, French, and American, other people who are interested in Asia at that time. So the Japanese government had to claim Hokkaido as their own. So the Ainu people are Japanese people, thus Hokkaido is Japan's territory.
Yeah, notice the way Hokkaido Former Aborigines Protection Act, and so the idea was these people used to be Aborigines, now they're Japanese. Is that right?
Yeah. But the interesting thing is, this protection, that's just in the name. It was basically the killing of the entire culture of the Ainu people. So what did they do? Okay, so let's go to number one. Jerry, can you read that?
It's for example, Iomante, a religious ceremony of sending the spirit of a bear to heaven was prohibited because the government considered it barbaric to kill a bear for the ritual. Now, I guess, I mean, I can see why they felt that way, but were people allowed to hunt bear for meat? It's just if you're doing it for religion, you can't do it, but if you're doing it for,
Yeah,
Going
and then-
hunting, you can, is that
yeah,
right?
and there were all kinds of area who kill deer in the name of ecology, because if there are too many deer, then they would die and do bad things, right? But the interesting thing here is, okay, the bear, I think you might remember when she was driving and we were in the woods, do you remember?
Yes.
And they were talking about the bear.
Kinko.
Yeah,
That's what
Kinko is called the bear god, and it is supposed to be the highest, even though Hiroko says there's no hierarchy per se. But the thing is, so it is very respected. So the Iomante is actually not killing the bear. That's not the point. That is, they would raise a cub from very small, cub to a big bear, and then they would have the celebration for 3 days and 3 nights. And then eventually the bear gets killed, but the purpose of it is to send the spirit of the bear up to heaven so that the bear can tell what kind of nice things that humans do. The 3 days of drinking and eating and partying and everything, right? And then, so the spirit would go there and then tell the other god to send abundance, yes?
Did they eat the bear?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I think they might,
Yeah.
Because that's why the Japanese consider it barbaric, right? I mean, if just you kill it. And then eating is a different story, isn't it? Okay, so let's go to number 2 then, since your mouth is open. Yeah, so
My mouth-
number 2.
oh. They want me to do that. The hunting and gathering Ainu were advised to become farmers, okay. However, the land given to them was often not arable. The Ainu did not have a notion of private land ownership. That's
Very
interesting.
good, 2020.
That's interesting.
Okay, now, so the Ainu did not have this notion of private land, meaning the land belongs to who? Everybody. Isn't that nice?
Yes.
Okay, so when Americans go, let's go to gather some mountain vegetables, okay? So as Americans, what do you do? Wow, there's so much mountain vegetables. What do you do? And you're the only ones who are there. Are you tempted to pick them all?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then bring home because that's your great harvest, isn't it? Okay? Now, do you know what an Ainu person would do? They would take only what they need and leave the rest for the other people who are going to come next. Because the land belongs to everybody. Does that make sense to you? And I'm pretty sure here in America we have the experience, oh, let's go hunting, go gathering or something, and then when we go there, somebody was there and then there's nothing around. Do you see that? But that's okay, because we are America, and survival of the fittest. If you can do it while you can. But the Ainu people would leave at least half or whatsoever for the next person, which I think is quite interesting. And the Ainu did not have this notion of private land ownership, so the Japanese could really take advantage of them. You see that point? Okay. Now, so let's go to number 3 then. Helena, what does it say?
The Ainu children had to go to Ainu schools to learn Japanese and ethics, moral education. The same was done in Okinawa, Taiwan, and Korea when Japan colonized them during World War II.
Thank you so much. Now, does this sound familiar? Have you heard about these people, indigenous people who have to go to special school apart from their parents?
Yeah.
So,
Go to Nebraska and we'll show you all the indigenous schools that were there.
Yeah. So something like that happened.
in America, for Native Americans and for the Cajun people in Louisiana, the same thing, that the kids were punished for speaking French.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And then certain Mexican Americans now, when I go to a Mexican restaurant, I speak Spanish to these Mexican people, right? And they say, oh, I don't speak Spanish.
That's the truth.
And the reason why they don't speak Spanish is because they don't want to be picked out, singled out as like immigrants' children or whatsoever. And I think it's sad, isn't it?
It's sad, but I will say that they don't actually speak Spanish very frequently. The kids, and especially the grandkids, second, third generation, it's so uncommon that they speak.
I
that they
know.
actually speak Spanish.
I know, but I tell my student at ULR, you should be proud of it because you can get better job. So anyway, so we need to go kind of quickly here. Okay, so, and this is like after World War II. The Hokkaido Ainu Association was established. So if you register yourself with the association, then you qualify as Ainu. That way you can get money, okay, scholarship, or funding for your house, or funding for this and that, okay? And then the Prime Minister Yasuhiro Nakasone claimed that Japan is a homogeneous nation, and this was quite controversial because some people got very, very upset. And especially the comment that he made about the difference between Japan and the United States, it was like, oh my gosh, it was really bad. So, and then, so this is the history that we come. But the interesting thing is now, 2008, the National Diet unanimously recognizes the Ainu as the indigenous people of Japan. It's only, 17 years ago or so? You see that? Which is interesting, isn't it? And then I think we covered social issues when I covered the Ainu people before. That is poverty, education, employment, discrimination, marriage, and so on. And again, some of you would say the story is very similar for certain groups of people here in America, right? Okay, now, so Hiroko's activism. So Hiroko became more aware of her values that were different from others in her teens and 20s. She felt regrettable and frustrating that she could not easily talk about herself. She has a very strong self-identity and consciousness as an Ainu and feels dissonant with her Japanese nationality. And she knows that misinformation and prejudice abound in Japanese society, and ignorance or indifference are the culprits for the social problem. So she wants to disseminate information about the Ainu in a more positive way by sharing her own stories and experiences. The history lessons at schools tend to focus on being invaded or discriminated against by the non-Ainu Japanese, or the depiction of the people by the mass media. So instead of giving a kind of negative kind of history of the Ainu, she wants to be very positive about what Ainu culture or Ainu whatsoever can contribute to the diversity of Japan that makes it better. So Hiroko's identity, she strongly identifies herself as an Ainu. She says, I'm an Ainu born in Japan. She has very strong self-conscious and pride as an Ainu. I think you could tell from her interview in the video, couldn't you? You know, she's not shy about it, and she's not ashamed of it or anything. She's very proud, and she feels comfortable. So at school, she felt marginalized. She was a minority person and experienced prejudice and overt discrimination. And she's not the only one. A lot of people who feel that they're marginalized, it comes not just from their existence, but from the interactions with other people. So when she started traveling abroad, she felt a sense of dissonance regarding her Japanese passport. She's more Ainu than Japanese. So wherever she goes abroad, then she has a Japanese passport. So she's Japanese, but she says, I'm Ainu. You know, so there's that kind of dissonance there, okay? So as an Ainu culture advisor, Hiroko lectures about the Ainu, her identity, tradition, way of life, etc. She sometimes encounters oppositions and harassment. It is often difficult to promote mutual understanding, but Hiroko considers it important to let her audience broaden their thinking by learning about the minority group. So when you do learn about new people, different kinds of people, your level of compassion and understanding would increase, and that would lead to the better world for everybody else. And you would like other people to do that too, right? Like there are lots of stereotypes, and a lot of stereotypes are so negative, and people just simply cannot get rid of it, you know. And then certain people react to stereotypes in a very funny manner too, right? So I'm going to this African-American woman who is a nice masseuse for the last 25 years. And then one year, I got huge watermelon from my Irish neighbor. And I couldn't eat it, so I cut it in half and I gave it half. And she says, is there any message? I said, what do you mean message? I thought you liked watermelons. And that's the message. And I said, well, this is very sweet, and I just wanted to give it to you. But she was talking about watermelons associated with black people, something like that. Does that make sense to you? I mean, so certain people, they react, I mean, they're oversensitive and overreacting to the stereotypes and everything. You know what I mean? But if you have that kind of negative attitude, why should I go to her for over 25 years every single week? Isn't that interesting? You know, so anyway, it goes both ways. So a little bit of sociological theory here. Okay, now, so George Simmel, he was co-founder of German sociology, and his major books, Conflict and the Web of Group Affiliations, Sociology Investigations on the Form of Association. And the interesting about George Simmel is that he was a Jew in the 19th century Germany. So his experiences in the German society at that time is quite interesting. That is, he is in Germany and he's part of it, but he is not part of it. Does it make sense to you? So that's what we call ambivalence. So Simmel talks about different kinds of sociological theories, okay? So Simmel felt both he was within society and outside of it. He felt marginal. Human beings always retain in a dual relation with society. So Simmel's, sociology is, characterized by like ambiguity, like there are always two ways to things and so on. So put Hiroko's way in there. So can you explain what Hiroko feels in Japan then, using Simmel's example? Jerry?
Yes, I think you're talking about all examples that exist all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
But in Germany and at that time, there was a lot of a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism.
Yes.
But yet he's a German. He's a German and he's a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I think when you were asking earlier, is she Japanese or Ainu? Well, she has a Japanese passport because the political entity that she lives in is Japan, but her ethnicity might be quite different. And that may be what's true through, with a lot of ethnic groups, that where especially when majority groups try to assimilate them, say, well, I want to keep my own culture, my own identity, but it doesn't change your nationality. You're still a member of this nation. And I think that's what's going on with the Ainus, what you're describing.
Very good. So one of the theories of Simmel is like social types. Like when we interact with certain people, we do not meet on a neutral ground, but we tend to categorize people into certain social types. And then people would base on their assumptions. You know what I mean? It's quite interesting. So if a person in a flannel shirt and blue jeans with a hole or something gets out of a pickup truck, you think that guy is just a redneck dude, right? And then you would talk down to them, and later you find out he's Sam Walton. Right? So we do have all these social types, such as the redneck, for example. So when people see Hiroko as an Ainu, then again there is a social type like that. So we can kind of use classical sociological theory to our everyday life in this contemporary world, which is great, isn't it? And one more thing, W.E.B. Du Bois, and I think you know that he is an African American sociologist. Okay, he's getting a lot of attention these days. Major works, the Philadelphia Negro, A Social Study, The Souls of Black Folk, and so on. And interestingly, when I teach theory, there was a deaf student, so we have to have subtitles, right? And then the AI does the subtitles. But whenever I say something like the Philadelphia Negro, the AI puts asterisks there. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, so what did this AI learn, right? And then I tell my class at the end of the class, do you have any questions on the idea of frustration or bitching? Again, the AI would put asterisks for bitching. Isn't that kind of funny how we come this far? I mean, Negro is. So, do we have to change the title to the Philadelphia African Americans? No, we're not going to. But anyway, so he was a historian, educator, and civil rights activist, and so on. And one of the theories, just like Zimmer that we talked about, he had as a Negro, again, double consciousness. That is, black people always look at themselves from the other's eyes and feel the two-ness of being an American and black. So the same thing is because, he's situation here in the United States, he's not white, he's an African American, and then, so he would have to act that, how do other people perceive me? I mean, but it's not limited to African Americans, to tell the truth. We always think like that, don't we? Some people have no clue and they don't do that, and that's why they would make very bad assholes of themselves, don't they? Because they have absolutely no regard for other people. But most of us, well-mannered people, we would always think what to say, what to do, and so on, and then decide, you see? Now, so let's talk about the summary of Hiroko's identity. So just like George Simmel, Hiroko feels she is both in Japanese society and outside of it. She's a marginal woman who likes Japan, but who strongly identifies with the Ainu. Today's Ainu still suffer from misunderstanding, prejudice, discrimination, indifference, and harassment. And just like W.E.B. Du Bois, Hiroko has double consciousness. She looks at herself from the eyes of the others, and she feels the two-ness of being an Ainu and Japanese, especially when she's abroad. So I just tried to put a little bit of sociology here today, okay? And anyway, and Hiroko says hi to you. I talked with her, and she says, "Oh, I wish I could be there," So maybe, if she can do the exhibit of her artwork and then the lecture or something, that's going to be a good educational opportunity, So anyway, so do you have any questions and answers? Not answers, but questions.
What year did the Japanese take over Hokkaido?
That was in like what year was that? 1869, something like that.
And before that, they just ignored it?
Well, it was called Ezo.
Edo?
Ezo.
Ezo.
Yeah. Ezo, basically like barbarian kind of land before. So the Japanese had to claim the land because the Russians are coming down.
Yeah.
So that was the 19th century thing.
Yeah.
Okay? And then when you think about what the Russians did to Japan at that time, and look what's going on in Ukraine. Old habits die hard, I used to say. Yes?
The American Indians were the indigenous people of America. And other people came from Europe, from Africa, and the Orient, and made a mixture. Okay, so today we see this mixture. If the Ainu were the indigenous people of Japan, where did all the other Japanese people come from?
Good question, isn't that? Very good question. So Japan used to be connected to the island, okay? So Sea of Japan, right? Sea of Japan is the ocean right now. But in those days, long time ago, Japan was annexed to the continent. So the Sea of Japan used to be a lake. So the people from China, Korea, or Russia could walk to Japan.
How long ago would that be? I mean, that must have been...
Thousands of years ago.
Well, more than thousands of years ago.
Yes, tens of thousands of years.
Tens of thousands of years ago.
So the Japanese people...
But then they would be the indigenous people, Japanese people, wouldn't they?
Yeah, so there were indigenous people of Japan, okay, who were in that place.
And how come Japan said the Ainu were...
Yeah, so Ainu, yes. And so were the Ryukyuan, obviously, because Ainu and Ryukyuan, they were, okay, so Hokkaido became an island, right? Okinawa became an island. So they were detached from Japan, but somehow their DNA, according to these scientists, they're very close, obviously. But in addition to the Jomon people, that is traditionally considered as the indigenous people of Japan, okay? The entire Japan. But there are people who came from the continent, the Chinese and Koreans and so on, and the blood mixed, especially in the mainland Japan, okay? But the Ainus in the north, and the Okinawans in the south, they were kind of separated from that, and that is why they keep a more, ancient German blood.
It would seem to me, though, that if you had a land connection, that would be, that would be so long ago. I would favor, or seem more logical, that it was ships or boats that came over to mix, rather than to say the whole thing was connected. I don't see in the last 100,000 years or 200,000 years, when humans were way back, it seems to me that the land wouldn't be, to make the land disconnected would be a lot longer than just the human experience.
Yeah, so that is like 30 to like 60,000 years ago, something like that.
It's been 60,000 years.
Yeah,
did they have evidence of the...
I'm not sure, because I'm a sociologist and I don't know much about these archaeological.
Well, National Geographic just recently had identified another, what they call mass migration. And so there were at least 5 mass migrations that happened across the continent during various times. There were more that occurred during the time that the ice caps pulled back the oceans and more of the land that is now currently under ocean, what you're talking about, Japan being connected with the mainland. That there was a lot of mass migration at that time. So there were more entities all over the world in that part that were mass migrating. That's where you get, they have pulled back the dates on when the mass migration occurred into the continental, what we call U.S., the Americas. They have pulled that date back because they have now proven there were more mass migrations. So, the fact that there are mass migrations going on in prehistory at different times, there's going to be a lot of spreading of the wealth of the genes. Hence, we've got different, not only mass migrations occurring, but we also have Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, those all spanning out, going to different areas and then dying off. So, that also is included in. So once an island or an area is isolated, then they develop their own cultural area, and that's what they're talking about. So there are mass migrations and influences from other areas, but once it becomes isolated again, then it gets its own cultural standing, its own identity, from just like the Ainu did and the Kaiyu did.
Yeah, so anyway, so when I was talking to this Ainu elderly, and he told me about his trip to Okinawa. And then what he said was, it was so funny when I went to Okinawa, I saw a lot of people who looked like me. Because of the long connection or something like that.
I'm curious about the variety of indigenous people in Japan. We're presenting the Ainu as the indigenous group, like we're saying the American Indians were the indigenous group here, but there were hundreds of American Indian nations and huge variety. Is that something similar in Japan? Are there a number of other indigenous groups?
Actually, as I said, like Jomon people, Jomon, Jomon people are the prototype of the mainland Japanese people, okay? And then we shift to another period, which is Yayoi. That's when the rice cultivation started. And that's when there were lots of people who came from China and Korea and so on at that time. So some of you might have noticed that Asians have, like, when you look at their eyes, like some people have 2 folds. And then there are people who have only 1 fold. Have you noticed that? Okay. So we said that the original Japanese people, the Jomon people, have 2 folds, right? Well, the continental people, they have like 1. That's just one kind of type of, like you would know, because the facial features are different. But since I'm not an archaeologist, I really don't know. But when I went to Hokkaido, and then not only just the Hokkaido and Okinawa, but my mother comes from the mountainous area from the mainland Japan, okay? And then when I went to Hokkaido, and then actually this lady, Dr. Tuda, she told me, you know, I asked her a question, you know, how much percentage is Ainu, how much percentage is Japanese? And then she said, excuse me, but I'm not a dog. And I can really say I'm half poodle and half golden retriever. I'm not a dog, so I can really say, you know, how much Ainu blood or how much Japanese blood I have. And I said, oh, I'm very sorry. She was offended like hell. So, oh, because she just got like that. Do I look like a dog? I said, no, I'm sorry, but you know. And then she said, you yourself can pass as part of Ainu. I said, why? And she said, because you got, you know, relatively big eyes for the Japanese person, and you have wavy hair, and I'm hairy. And then he said, you're right, because my mother's side, they do look like they can pass as Ainu, you know. And then my dad's side as well. And the reason is, if you are from the mountains, isolated areas, your blood does not mix as much as other areas. So it would keep the blood more intact because of that, you know, remote area kind of stuff. And then when I interviewed this Japanese man, Ainu man, and I made a film about it, and his name is Kawanano Kazunobu. I used to call Kaz, you know, Kaz. And then when I showed his picture and video to my dad, he started crying because he looked exactly like his dad, and so on. So there are certain traits that you can kind of tell that there might be some kind of blood in there, you know. So I asked Dr. Tuda, you know, so if I said, well, I'm part Ainu, you know, can I pass? And she said, yes. I said, oh, okay, that's cool.
I noticed on the map that it said some of the original Ainu territory became Russia.
Yes.
Do we know how the Russian Ainu are going, and are there any connections between the people between the two countries?
Well, the Russian Ainu people, we didn't hear much about them anymore, and I'm pretty sure they're kind of assimilated. But the reason why the full-blooded Ainu people can have fair skin and long nose and hairy because of the Russian kind of blood. You see that? So the Ainu from Hokkaido and the Ainu from, say, Sakhalin, they look quite different. But again, they used to be the mixture of the blood and everything, right? So when I went to Hokkaido the first time, I saw a woman who looked like a Russian in her facial features, but she was an Ainu. And then I saw another man, and he looked like my friend from Sardinia, Italy. And then there was another one who looked like Polynesia. So why is there diversity? I mean, it's the same thing with Hispanics, but Hispanics have something to do with Hispanic, right, obviously. But anyway, so I asked this guy who works at a museum, and he said, like, there's this trio of human race, and it goes one way, the Caucasian, Caucasoid, and then the Negroid, and then the Mongoloid, like three of them like to diverging like that, right? And his theory is the Ainu diverged while they were still kind of together, and that is why there's a wide variety of physical features. That was his theory. But again, I'm not in that kind of science. You know, I'm a sociologist, I don't know.
You know, I understand that your mother was insulted that she's not a dog, but we Americans often are dogs. We're mutts. And we use DNA to kind of figure out what various ethnicities we have. And I'm just wondering, is that phenomenon also going on in Asia? And if so, are people learning, well, I'm, you know, got 20% Ainu or 20% Chinese or something like that. I mean, for instance, if you look at DNA testing, they'll say you've got so much percentage Ashkenazi Jewish. And so, I mean, these populations all came from from Europe. And so it seems to me that perhaps, some kind of a similar analysis of people in Japan might give us some very interesting results.
Yeah, but like ancestry kind of test kits, they're not really available in Japan and they don't really care. Right? And then again, the interesting things happen too. Like there are, just like anti-Semitism, there are Japanese people who hate Koreans or Chinese or anybody, right? And then they look Japanese, but the interesting thing is when they find out that their great-grandfather was from Korea or China, all of a sudden their perception started to change, which is interesting, isn't it?
Well, I mean, how would you do it other than name? Last name, surname, otherwise how would you know?
Exactly. Yeah, actually you can do that family registration because they record everything, right? Okay, and then sometimes you can tell the name, like Korean names or Chinese names or Ainu names to get your ancestors like that, okay? But we can always change names,
Yeah, it's very interesting to talk about trait differences like the way the hair curls or the way the eye looks or the nose. And I would have not been able to distinguish an Okinawan from a Japanese from an Ainu before learning those things. And so it just sort of goes to show that in any culture, the specific traits that are important or thought to be important are sort of kind of random, really. I mean, whether it's the tone of skin or the shape of a particular feature, it differs from one place to another.
Yeah, and that is why you should never ask an Asian-looking person, "Are you Japanese?" Don't do that. They get very upset. Or asking the Japanese, "Are you Chinese?" No, don't. So the best way to do is, what part of Asia do your ancestors come from? That way to really cover your butt, right? I mean, some people are very touchy about these things. But again, like we adopted a puppy, and it is the second order rescue dog. So her name is Chula, which means beautiful in Okinawan language. So Chula's mother was found on the street, and then Amy, who is a school nurse, found her, and then they kept the dog at the school and so on, and then they found out that white dog was pregnant. So nobody wants to take her. And then, so Amy's friend says, "Oh, she has to go to the town." And then Amy says, "Well, she's pregnant and she lived this far and so on. So let me take her home, and if my husband wants to get a divorce from me because of this dog, that's okay." Amy, the school nurse, decided to take that dog in, right? And then sure enough, the dog had 12 dogs.
Oh, no.
Okay, and then one of them was killed because her mother sat on her or something. And Amy, being a nurse, tried to do everything to rescue the dog. Okay, and then according to the advertisement in Facebook, they were listing Great Pyrenees dog. Okay, and then we looked at the picture. Some of them are brown, some of them are spotty, and some of them are this and that. And what is that? But, Amy's husband, Connor, says they're Great Pyrenees, which he didn't know. So it turned out that they did DNA testing or something, and it turned out that they're not pure Great Pyrenees, but part Great Pyrenees, part Golden Retriever, and part Rottweiler. And part something, right? But ours, Chira, looks white and she's Great Pyrenees, right? So when I told Jason, my man, about the content, what he said is, I don't care if she's pure Great Pyrenees or part Golden or part whatsoever, she is a dog and I love her.
That dog must have had a wild night.
So one of her sisters have this more Golden Retriever kind of nature, another one has more Rottweiler kind of nature, and I don't know, but we love our little puppy. So.
One last question, anybody?
Okay, It's almost 3 o'clock. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Io.
You're welcome. With your family.
Yes. Wow, I certainly got tall. Thanks for coming to visit with us today. Grab a snack on your way out, but also think about joining the Arkansas Society of Free Thinkers. Think about donating, and most of all, we need volunteers more than any of those things. We have events set up on arfreethinkers.org and on our meetup site, meetup.com/arfreethinkers. And if you have a moment, please follow us on Facebook, follow us on Meetup. You can download the app on your phone and keep track of events. And we will see you next month.